Hello and welcome to our live stream. I'm Victor Asachi from Yalantis. We create custom healthcare solutions that digitize and automate manual processes, simplify workflows, ensure proper interoperability, and compliant with the healthcare industry regulations. And today, we are covering the topic of digital transformation in healthcare with three amazing healthcare experts. Edward Marx, CEO at Marx Advisory, Simon Jones, Principal at Ironwood Health, and Mark Boudreau, COO at Healthfully. Prepare yourselves for about 90 minutes of personal experience, valuable insights, and great ideas for digitizing, automating, and optimizing healthcare business processes for more efficiency and sustainability. Feel free to ask questions in the chat section of the live stream. Our speakers will be able to answer them later during their Q&A sessions. All right, let's begin. And how do you create this intimate alignment in the environments of complexity and unite tech with business? Get the answer from our first expert, Edward Marx, who is a healthcare innovator and a leader with over 2 decades of experience in digital transformation, strategy, and execution. Edward, please take the floor.
Hey, thank you, Victor. And it's great to be talking about digitally enabled healthcare transformation, certainly one of my favorite topics. And I think everyone will appreciate why by the time we get through. But I'm really honored to be presenting along with my colleagues, Mark and Simon as well. So really set to get going. So with that, let's go ahead and start on this topic and moving from pockets of brilliance to enterprises of excellence. So how do you do it? So the first thing on the next slide, what we want to talk about is what is digitally enabled business transformation. Everyone has a different definition. There's no perfect definition, but just so that we're all on the same sort of framework as we begin. For me, it's really about three things. One is the business processes, right? It's less about the tech, which we'll get to, but it's really about the business processes and ultimately the customer experience. So in this case, for us, patients and their families, as well as clinicians who are taking care of patients. And then undergirding a lot of that is the whole science, with data and analytics and the ability to make smart decisions. And I won't give you the buzzwords because others will do that. But I think we're all pretty smart on all the different buzzwords that we use in our industry. But when I think about business transformation, digitally enabled, it's really about business processes, it's about experience, and then the leveraging of data analytics that we get from that. So I call it survival of the digitalist. All right, so let's move on how you get that. So on the next slide, my first caveat, maybe my one and only caveat, is in the country of Honduras, which sits in Central America. It's in a precarious location geographically because it's susceptible to really dangerous weather, hurricanes specifically. And as a result, for many, many decades, it has just hurt the country in terms of its ability to move forward economically because of the hazards that these weather situations cause for the country. And so in particular, there was a Choluteca River. So there's a great river that runs through the country, and it's really important that commerce is able to transverse that river. And so it was always getting destroyed. Anything they tried to pull across the river, what bridges they made, were getting destroyed and keeping east to west flowing and hurting the country economically. And so all the great planners got together with great designers and architects out of Japan who are used to making structures to withstand the elements. And they built this beautiful bridge called the Choluteca Bridge. And it's beautiful, so beautiful that they would advertise the bridge as part of their trying to attract visitors to their country. So in 1998, Hurricane Mitch came through, and on the next slide, you'll see the results. So what happened was the bridge withstood the result of the hurricane on that next slide, but the river moved. And so the real important thing here is that while it's great to be thinking strategically, and I'm a big believer in strategy, we have to be agile. So when it comes to digital transformation, you have to be agile. So you can see the bridge withstood, but the river got moved in the process of the storm. So if we're agile, we can move that bridge with wherever the river is going, right? Because it changes. There's a new technology that pops up every couple of years. That's an absolute game changer. So as we think about business enabled, digitally enabled healthcare transformation, make sure you keep agile in mind of everything we're about to talk about. All right, so now we're going to go on the next slide. We're going to start in. It's really 2 slides of content here. and there's going to be 6 things that enable business transformation, and none of them are technical. Okay, so you need the technical, and other speakers are going to cover some of the technical aspects of that. But I'm telling you, if you want to succeed, you could have the best technology in the world, but if you're not agile and you don't incorporate these 6 things that I'm going to talk about, you will fail. And the beautiful thing about the 6 things that I'm going to speak about is they're all free. Oftentimes people say, well, I can't do that because I don't have a budget. I get it. Budgets are super helpful. But in the things I'm going to talk about, no budget required. All right, here we go. I'm going to try to give you one example from my experience on each one of these 6 things. And hopefully between the definition and the example, it'll make a lot of sense how you can do the same thing. And I'll just talk for about 15 more minutes and leave 10 minutes at the end for any questions that you might have. All right, embed yourself in the business. All right, so how do you embed yourself in the business? There's multiple ways. One is just to have a business relationship manager. Now, it doesn't have to be a full-time employee. Again, I told you everything I'm going to share is free. It can be an additional duty as assigned. So when I was working my way up the ranks before I became a CIO, I often worked in environments like this, and I had multiple clients within our healthcare system. And my job, and then when I was CIO, I assigned people to do the same, was to make it so compelling to the business unit that they thought you worked for them, right? So these business relationship managers are so embedded, they attend their own C-suite that the business might have, or their leadership cohort. They act and talk just like any member, so that if someone came through a third party and looked at a team meeting, they wouldn't know that one person was actually from IT in a different division. So they're so embedded. It's so critical that you do this, because that's the only way to gain the trust, understand the business, and then you bring that back to IT, so IT can make sure that we have great digital transformation because we know the client intimately. So this is a deep, deep connection of embedding in the business. All right, cross-pollination. So one of the jobs for us as leaders is to connect that brain to the heart. And I'm going to give you some examples. So cross-pollination. So I'm going to give you a super personal example, and then I'm going to give you one for your whole team. So I worked in the OR 1 day a week. So I worked a full shift. That's embedding in the business and cross-pollination. So I knew when I spoke to my clients, which were mostly clinicians and administration, I not only knew my job as the CIO, but I knew their jobs as well. Why? Because I worked in their environment 1 day a week. Yep, I did it 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I did it in addition to my regular job, and I served as an anesthesia tech. I'm telling you, you could do any job. It's not going to be a super technical job, a clinically technical job, but you can volunteer for anything and work 1 shift a week. It'll be a game changer for your leadership stature in your organization. Now, if that's just too much, the other thing you can do, and I did this also, was volunteer weekly. So you want to really learn the business, volunteer. And so I was a patient volunteer up on the chemo floor. So we had outpatient chemo, and my mom had outpatient chemo. So I knew that, man, I would never want my mom to be alone. And there's patients that show up alone. And so I got to hang out with them 1 hour a week during my lunchtime on Thursdays. So this is another easy thing to do. But here's the best one for all of the team. So every person, including administrative assistants, and so in some cases I had 1,500 employees, everyone spent 1 day a year with a clinician. Now, 1 day a year may not sound like much, but when you multiply that by all the years you do such programs, it's a lot. So in any cases, it's typically like I've been places for 8 years at a time. So that meant that person had that experience 8 times. So 8 full days. My only requirement, and they could pick everything. And the administration loves this. Are you kidding me? To say, hey, I care about you so much that I'm going to not work 1 day so I can just experience what you experience as a nurse, what you experience as a med tech, what you experience as a lab tech, or what you experience as a doctor. And then, so the whole health system will open up to you. I've done this in multiple health systems. The whole health system will open up to you and offer you anything you want to do, which is great for your employees, because some might want to be part of a heart surgery team. Some of them might want to just spend time in the lab, whatever it is. The only requirement was that they do a little write-up at the end of each one about what they learned. And I'll give you one example how profound this is. So I had one person say, Mr. Marx, when you came up with this idea, I thought it was the dumbest thing ever. I've got a big backlog of things I need to do for my clients. And I was like, oh my gosh, really? We have to do this? He goes, I've been working here for 25 years and I never knew we had patients. Now, of course, he knew we had patients. He knew here that he worked for a health system. We took care of patients, but he didn't know here in the heart. And when that happened, he transformed and he became the best dang database administrator ever. He was fully engaged in his job and became that much more efficient. And he had meaning for his life and for his career. So I cannot overemphasize. Again, this is all free. It takes some coordination, but it's free. And I'm telling you, it'll change the lives of your people and you'll never become a more tighter, close-knit team that is hyper focused on taking care of patients. All right, next one, shared business objectives. So this is easy. So everyone has business objectives, right? You're rated on them at least annually. Some of you might call them KPIs or OKRs. We call them OKRs. And so with the med staff in particular, this was very troublesome, right? Because clinicians, physicians in particular, we were bringing lots of change on them, electronic health records and then all the other virtual care, bringing lots of change, right? And it was hard for them because they were dealing with other stressors and it's like, oh my gosh, IT, right? So oftentimes IT became the bane of clinicians because we were bringing so much change and disrupting things. And so we made the OKR physician satisfaction. So that was the number one OKR objective and key result for both ourselves and the medical staff. And our bonuses were tied to it. They had skin in the game. We had skin in the game. So we wanted to do this right. So a year later, I get a phone call from George. He was the SVP for the medical staff. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's he going to say? He's like, Ed, this is George. And I want you to know, we just got the survey results. So I took a deep breath because I was like, oh my gosh, we're not going to score favorably. It's going to hurt morale. It's going to hurt bonuses, all those sort of things. He goes, IT was rated number one across all services in the health system, number one. And it's only because we had the shared OKRs, which then drove our performances. So again, I just covered 3 things you can do that are free, that are meaningful, that'll be game changers for you to do digital transformation in healthcare. So I got 3 more on the next slide, 3 more techniques for you. One is enhancing relationships. So this is super easy also. There's the easy things like I would do walk with Ed. So, our clinicians, our customers, oftentimes they can't meet during the day. They've got to see patients and round at 7. So I would round with them. Or I would say I had this walk with Ed program that started at 6 or 6:30 a.m. on certain mornings. We had a lot of hallways because we were located in a cold part of the country. And so, especially during the wintertime, you never want to go outside, but you could walk for miles and miles. And this was like, hey, let's get our steps in and just chat. And then I also did wine, and it meant both wine and wine, if you know what I'm saying. So after hours, there was a what's it called? A hotel that was attached to our facilities. And so it was easy. There was a common place there. There was a bar there. There was a restaurant. And so every certain night, every Wednesday night is like, hey, from 5 to 7, I'm just going to hang out there. And if you want to wine with wine, I'm there. And so it's easy. But here's the best thing you can do. Again, it's all free. Is we never had an IT leadership meeting in IT. All right. So have all of your meetings outside of IT. And where do you have them? In your hospitals, in your divisions that you support, in your clinical divisions. And so that's what we did. We met every week as an IT leadership team, and we would rotate around to our various hospitals. And then we'd rotate to our various divisions, our clinical divisions, as well as our corporate divisions like HR and finance. Imagine if you did that every week. It makes a huge difference because then we bring in that C-suite or the leadership team from that cohort that we're meeting with, and we have a dialogue. How are things going? How can we do better? We tour their facility. It is so meaningful, and for both parties. So again, another thing that's free. I could give you so many examples, but for sake of time, I'm going to move on. All right, scaling leadership. So a lot of the things I'm talking about, if you do it all yourself, which you can, and I have, it's not the best way. You need to scale yourself so that you don't burn out and you're more effective, right? If there's what's more effective, 1 of you or 5 of you? So I go with the 5 of you. So how do you scale leadership? It's really easy. And what I'm going to tell you here has spawned 21 CIOs in healthcare. I think that's the number. There's 21 healthcare CIOs today that used to report to me. And it's because I did simple things like what I'm about to show you. We call it Business Technology Leadership Academy. So for a year, we selected, I had 6 direct reports. So our cohort was 7 people because we wanted a 1-to-1 match. So we had 7 people that we recruited in, and this was so popular. It was a competitive process to get into this program. And now imagine, again, you say 7 people, big deal. Well, you do this times 8 years. That's 50 some people. So this really scales quite beautifully. So then what we would do is they would come into the cohort and they'd spend an hour and a half with us per month. And we would teach something super relevant on leadership, on culture, on business and clinical transformation. And then they would also pair up with someone. They'd have an hour and a half mentoring meeting every month. At the end of the year, towards the end of the year, they would meet up as a team, and we'd give them a real business problem we were dealing with, and they'd have to solve for it and present it. And sometimes we actually used their solution to solve something we couldn't solve ourselves. It's things like that. When you build into people, when you help them reach next level, they take your team, your organization next level. And then suddenly it's no longer just me and my 6 direct reports that are leading IT. I've got 50 other people at all levels. Some of these people were analysts working their way up. Some were managers working their way up, directors working their way up, VPs. You can see how this permeates the entire organization. It's just, and it's free. All right, last one, strategy and governance. All right, obviously we all know about aligning our strategy with the business, be agile per the Choluteca Bridge. But here's this thing on governance. People still struggle with this. It's funny, when I first got into IT, everyone talked about governance. What are they all talking about today? Governance. It's like mind-blowing that we haven't figured this out. But I think I figured it out, at least getting us a lot closer to nirvana. And that is, do away with all the superstructure. Like I created a lot of superstructure for IT governance, and it was actually pretty decent, but it took a lot of time and effort, a lot of resource time and effort. And so ultimately, I just came to the aha moment that my IT steering committee was the C-suite. So I approached the CEO and I said, look, give me 15 minutes every other meeting. That's all I need. We can get rid of hundreds of hours of meeting time and a lot of resource, and let's just cut to the chase. And that's what we did. So the C-suite became the IT steering committee. And here's the kicker. Here's how we reduced 80% of requests. Well, one, the fact that they were going to have to present ultimately in front of the CEO and the CFO, that cut down the amount of frivolous requests dramatically. But the other thing that cut it down is we came up with 365-day review, which meant when you came and you pitched whatever you wanted money for, we had one slide, the ROI slide, and we told people, they knew that they would be coming back in 1 year. And what are we going to show when they come back in 1 year? We're going to show that original slide that said all their ROI commitments and then reality. So they're going to be held accountable. We're going to be transparent. And it wasn't meant to be punitive. It was really meant to say, hey, we take this serious. We expect results. And as a result, we only got 20% of the flow for ideas to come in. And of those 20% that got funded, almost all of them achieved their ROI. So it's beautiful. All right. So why do we want to do all this? And just doing a time check. Yeah, I'm coming down the last 2 minutes and we're going to do questions and answers. Why did we do all this? I want to tell you, I want to finish with a quick story. So on the next slide, the story begins. So I've been very fortunate to be part of Team USA. So I do this thing called triathlon and duathlon. And so I've been doing it since 2013. So it's my 10th year, heading into my 11th year now. And so 1 year was 2018. I was in a certain part of the United States, far away from my home state where the national championships were. So every year to make Team USA, in order to go to the world championships, you have to qualify. And so in 2018, I was in a race in South Carolina. So now my home at the time was in Ohio. So I was far away in South Carolina. And during that race, during the last 2 miles of the run, I felt this heaviness on my chest. And I was like, well, I can't be having a heart attack because everyone tells me I'm super healthy. I go to all these doctor visits. They did calcium scans. They look at my heart. They're like, Ed, you're top 1% for people in your age group, for men in your age group. You've got nothing to worry about. You're as healthy as can be. And sure enough, I was super, super fit. And so it can't be a heart attack. But then I reasoned, wait a second, all signs are this is a heart attack, although I should be dead. But if I stopped, I was thinking about door to balloon time. So for those of you who have some clinical background on this, door to balloon time is like if your heart muscle is without blood for over an hour, you're going to have heart damage, right? So when people have heart attacks and they never fully recover, it's because they have heart damage. So I knew door to balloon time, I had to get my heart fixed within an hour. So I thought if I stop, by the time they reach us in a race, because races, they stop, all the traffic is blocked with fencing and all that kind of stuff. I thought it'll take them forever. But I knew at the end was the medical tent with the ambulance. And so I was looking at my time and I was about doing 6.5 minute miles now. I slowed down a little bit because of the heart attack. And I was like, all right, I'll get there in 13 minutes. So that's what I did. So on the next slide kind of shows the run. And then you can advance past, you can go, oh yeah, those are some of the tools. You can go past that. It kind of show the run past the finish line, raising my hand on the finish line on the next slide. And then ultimately I ended up in an ambulance, and the ambulance took me to the hospital, and the hospital was waiting for me because they knew I was coming, and they already had all of my data because of that little EKG capability. See that little card-sized tool there. That's an EKG reader that hooks up to your iPhone. So within the time I was in the ambulance, they had all this data. And when I arrived at the hospital, so you can advance a couple slides. It'll probably take you to me in a hospital bed. So by the time I got there, they said, Ed, there's good news. We're sorry. The bad news is, we're sorry this happened. But the good news is I'm online now with the world famous cardiologist from Cleveland Clinic, which was where my hospital was in Ohio. And we already have a plan. This is a no-brainer. This is going to be super easy. You're going to be out of here in no time. And sure enough, we did the surgery or the cath, and it went beautifully. And then the next thing, I was like, I made the team. So I made it in. Even though I slowed down, I got the last spot on the team. So I told my doctor, look, I want to, in 90 days, is the World Championships in Odense, Denmark. And I want to make it. And they kind of laughed. They're like, Ed, that's impossible. But because of the technologies you see there, they were able to adjust my meds on a daily basis. Everything was Bluetooth into my system. Yeah, you could advance now probably all the way to the end. And so what happened was after 90 days, I was healthy and fit. So if you advance the very last slide, that I finished at the World Championships in Odense, Denmark, representing Team USA 90 days later. And this is only possible because of the technology, because of the transformative, digitally enabled technology that we had. And why did we have it? Because of all those things I just went through, those 6 things that are all free. This story would not have happened, no time for the details, but without making all 6 of those things pop. And it's not just for me, although that's my why, is we want to help save people's lives, people like me, and improve the quality and care of their lives. And so that's really why we do this. That's really why I'm so passionate about sharing some of these ideas of what you can do, because it makes a difference in the lives of people. And one day it may make a difference in your life, just like it made a direct difference in my life. Hope that never happens to you. Happened to me, but glad there's people like you and I out there working with clinicians, working with the business to enable technology such as these to ultimately save people's lives. And that's really it. That's all I have. We're a few slides behind. That's cool. It just showed the very last slide has a year later, the race was in the same location, the national championships. I had a chance to go and meet the people that helped save my life. And that was a really transformative moment as well. All right, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to turn it back over to Victor and see if there's any questions. Yeah, there's the World Championships, and there's the team that helped save my life a year prior. All right, so Victor, see if there's any questions that people might have.
Yeah, well, first off, let me say how amazed I am by the personal story and the level of engagement and the level of involvement in every single process optimization, and most importantly, your desire to help people, to care about people, which is at the heart of every optimization you initiated. And I'm really amazed by the last story with your personal experience of the heart attack and how you eventually saw the results of caring about people and having caring about people in your mind from the very beginning. That's amazing. And I'm sure that the listeners are amazed as well. I can already see the questions here. And if you don't mind, I will read out some of them to you. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's go. Well, the first one. Thank you for a great speech, Edward. From your own experience, is there any way to predict the river move when thinking of business transformation overall?
Yeah, I think one way is to really look out in the future in other industries. So healthcare generally is a couple years behind. Some may say a little bit more than that. So if you look at other industries, like a great example is consumerism. Consumerism took over a lot of other industries. It's finally come to healthcare, and now we're really having to differentiate ourselves with better service, more transparency, making seamlessness. Right? We used to, back in the old days, we just made patients come to us when we were ready to see them, and we would put them in waiting rooms for an hour. Can you imagine that? Could you imagine going to some other sort of experience and dealing with that? You'd say, no way, and you'd go to a competitor. And that's exactly what's happened. And so that's what I would do. Look at other industries, see what's changing, seeing how, I try not to say the word AI the whole time, how AI is transforming other industries, because obviously it's in healthcare as well now, and it's going to continue to be. And so that's one way of doing it, is looking forward in other industries and then taking that back in what we're doing today.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It's about reusing the experiences from other industries and domains, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. We've got the next one. Amazed by how Edward is engaged in problem solving and understanding the problems from the inside. Edward, do you mean to say that such an engagement eventually paid out?
Yeah, I can't imagine. I know a lot of my peers would just sit in their offices and just focus on technical things. And it's important you have people like that. But as the leader of the organization, you have to be externally focused. You have to trust your team, give the team what they need for success. And then you need to be out there and making sure that you're developing those relationships, that you're constantly learning more, that you're embedded in the business, doing all the different things that I spoke about. It's a game changer. It makes a big difference. If people think about, and I'm not here to talk about my career. I'm just using it as an example. I started late in my career in healthcare IT, but I think within 5 or 6 years, I became the CIO of a multi-billion-dollar academic health center. It wasn't because I knew a lot more than anyone else with technology. It's just that I did the things that I just shared with you, and it's as simple as that.
Well, yeah. Let me add also that I was really surprised by the story when you spent a whole day with some of the employees, right? Getting into their details, getting into their problems and issues, and eventually understanding that the IT was mentioned most of all. And I'm surprised how this really facilitated the solution of this problem overall in your organization. It was really nice. All right, let's move on. There is another one. Can you provide examples of healthcare organizations that have undergone successful digital transformation when it comes to processes improvements?
Yeah, I think there's many. So I certainly don't have a I don't have time to go into all of them. I'll mention a couple of them. I was very fortunate to write a book a couple years ago called Healthcare Digital Transformation, and in that book, we were able to do a lot of research and find different organizations. And I wrote some books more recently on innovation. So I get to see a lot from different organizations. I think I have to say Mayo Clinic because my best friend is the CIO there. But they do a very innovative things. So they've created this culture of innovation, and no one's perfect. Everyone's got a lot of room to grow and do things. But they've done some pretty amazing things, with digital transformation and innovation. I'll name one more, and then I'll tell you something that's more fundamentally important, though. But Intermountain has a pretty good reputation as well. I was friends with the former CEO, and what he was able to do there, the culture. It goes back to culture, and that's really where I wanted to end up with, is that these leaders have created cultures of innovation. So you don't need to be a big, I gave example of big health systems. You don't need to be a big health system to be innovative and do these sort of things. And you don't need anyone with the title of innovation or transformation to do these great things. So that's kind of a misnomer. And I should have given you maybe better examples of smaller healthcare systems or small hospitals doing it. A lot of times we acknowledge just what the big ones are doing because they have the brand, but you can do this anywhere.
That's true. That's totally true. And to the listeners, be sure to get your copy of the book. All right, let's move on. We got some few more questions, if you don't mind, so that we could answer the last two. The first one: how do you think can healthcare organizations really ensure smooth digital transformation without compromising patient safety and care? Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, that part of the reason we're so far behind is because we have this risk adverse culture for good reasons, right? Because that's the way we were raised, especially on the clinical side, is that do no harm, and so we're very careful. So what I say is do in areas that don't impact clinical care, be radical with innovation, take risks, accept failure, when you do it quickly, right? Agile principles, fail quickly, and work with partners, work with startups. Don't try to do it yourself, and that's how you mitigate some of the risk as you go into the patient care side. So you're starting to change the culture a little bit, which is the first example. Then when you get to the patient side, work with your partners, work with your vendors, and then that way you can reduce some of the risk because they've got more experience and they can help you with safeguards, and then start taking a little bit more risk because nothing venture, nothing gain. And again, I'm not talking about being silly and taking people's lives into into danger. But I think we can do a lot more. So I think we become so far risk adverse that we're actually hurting the patients. So I think we have to move back to the center. And those were some of the ways that I just talked about that can help us get back to that center.
Totally agree. All right, thank you so much. The last one. What do you think about the recent AI regulation initiatives from the US government, specifically in healthcare? Oh, yeah, we tried to avoid it, but we can't.
Well, I take a very cautious approach in general with AI. We're like we're talking about with the risk is like let's push the limits. And yeah, I think there are guidelines from the government. Let's push the limits in areas that won't like impact negatively patient care. So there's lots of examples, right, that are going on today, which I think are great. Is like routine responses to patients is a most popular example because that's being experimented with now. You're not going to ruin anyone's life by doing that. So I think we got to move boldly, quickly, try lots of different things, and at the same time be aware of particularly around the large language models that may have inherent biases and things like that in them, so that we don't perpetuate bias or discrimination within our systems. We don't make things worse. So that's my only cautionary tale is like, be very mindful of that aspect. But other than that, take the regulations for what they're worth. But I would push hard and try different things and let people experiment. I think enough people are interested on their own. You don't have to again, you don't have to create positions. You don't have to create a title. You just ask people to go do it. There's a lot of people. I mean, that's the thing. It's a whole other topic, but there's a lot of people already in your organization, in your IT shop that have their self-interest in it. Like, oh, I want to learn this. Let them go. Give them something. Give them 10% of their time and let them riff on something and come back with some ideas. And that's how you make change happen and transformation happen.
Wow, yeah, totally agree. Thank you so much again for sharing your personal experience, sharing those amazing stories of caring about people and transforming businesses for the healthcare. Thank you so much also for answering the questions. We will now be able to move on, I guess, to our next speaker. Thank you so much again, Edward. And let's continue. Well, our second expert speaker says that the build versus buy approach in software development is overly simplistic. It often creates a false perception of the road ahead. Only build if you have to, and you have to. So choose what you need to build. Hi, Simon. Hope you're already here. Please take the floor.
Yep. Hi. Thanks, Victor. And it was really great. I just wanted to thank Edward for saying give people 10% of their time to do something new, because I think that's a tremendous way to get a team both invigorated around their current work and moving into some change. So I just love that. I love that comment. So that was a great takeaway for me. So what I want to talk about today is I'll just briefly introduce myself, and then I'll talk a little bit about this kind of build versus buy decision. And we've been having this build versus buy discussion. I think everybody has it in every organization, and boards want to hear, well, why would you build? Why would you buy? Those kinds of things. And we talk about it so much that I think it has become overly simplistic. And I'll go through why that is and talk a bit about when you would buy, when you would build, and what it really means to do both. So a bit about me and my firm is, so I'm with a firm called Ironwood Health. I'm a principal at Ironwood Health. We are a group of folks who has been there and done that. All of us have C-suite experience in our backgrounds. I've been a CIO, I've been a chief product officer, I've been a VP of health information technology for a very large health plan. I've implemented the websites and e-business for another very large health plan. So have been through this this discussion more than a few times with more than a few executives, more than a few clients. So wanted to jump in and talk about where we are. And I will start with this. So as a CIO, and I'm going to kind of take the CIO hat on this one, is a lot of times it starts one of two ways. One of them is, the business leader comes to you and says, so I was at a conference, and as a CIO, your immediate kind of want to put your head in your hands and go, oh no. we were at a conference, we saw this great new software. The vendor said it's going to fix all our problems with XYZ. And it's really easy to turn on and it barely needs IT. And those of you who are in the technology world or the CIOs sitting on this call, you've heard this more than once. And your response, I think, is, oh, really? And then conversely, we often hear, so we have this idea for some software that will fix our problems with everything in the world, anything in the world. And we think we should build it because, and there's a ton of different reasons people will come up with to build stuff. And some of them are very valid, some of them are not so valid. But this is a place that it often starts. And really, I tend to, in both of those scenarios, think, oh boy. And it starts as a somewhat innocent, somewhat seemingly simplistic beginning. And really, this build versus buy, it's not that simple, and it's overly simplistic. And what Victor said was, it creates a false perception of the road ahead. And the reason it creates a false perception of the road ahead is because nothing happens in isolation. Even something as seemingly simplistic as somebody saying, I want a Smartsheets account to do project management. If you are the CIO, CISO, then you think, well, yeah, but what about somebody putting corporate confidential information into that Smartsheet about when we're going to launch a project? Do I want that just out there on somebody's desktop that they're billing to their corporate credit card? So even something that may seemingly be as simplistic as that, or as innocuous as that, can become very, very complex very quickly. So what are the considerations we are thinking about when we think about build versus buy, and where do we want to get to, which is generating the most enterprise value we can for the company? So we're looking first at the ecosystem and the environment. So what is your own internal ecosystem in your company? Because what you're doing needs to fit within what you have today or with what you're building, ideally both. And then what is the overall environment? Because you're not standalone. You are looking at how does your company fit within the larger environment. So when we start thinking about, putting something in, there's a knock-on effect to getting data in and out of the company, in and out of other systems. So there's that is a clear consideration. The roadmap to a successful implementation. People often minimize this and think, well, and I don't know how many people are on the call, and if I could see you all, I would sure, when I say this, I'd see a lot of heads nodding, which is, oh, it's only going to take us 6 months to turn this on. No. There's a lot of work that goes into either a build or a buy here, and there's a lot of remarkably similar work. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then another key consideration is, what are your internal capabilities and commitment? Because they're very different to commit to buying something and using it versus building something and maintaining it. So we'll talk a bit about there. I'm going to touch upon everyone's favorite topic here, intellectual property. And then I'll talk a little bit about the cost to implement and maintain. So when we're talking about a build versus buy decision and trying to look at this holistically, it is much more complex than a lot of people would immediately think of. So just a really quick view of the healthcare ecosystem, and this is grossly simplified. So when we look at this, it's probably hard to see, but you've got your patient, you've got your provider world, you've got your payer world, you've got interfaces between all of these things happening. And then within these bubbles, you've got your interfaces between systems. You've got your interfaces with the databases. You've got your services buses that you may or may not have intelligence within them. You've got portals. You've got mobile apps. You've got stuff that people don't tend to think about, which is you've got your HRIS systems. You've got your CRM systems. You've got your call center systems stuff. You've got your, all of that stuff that you have to figure out how this is going to fit within. That said, I generally start with a principle which says only build if you have to, and you have to. So really choose what you need to build. And what I mean by that is with very, very rare exceptions, maybe that Smartsheet example to use do project management, you need to build something. Because if you want whatever you're buying, if you go down the buy road, you are going to have to integrate that into your ecosystem, your environment, both in your own ecosystem and with the overall environment, because you're going to need data to come into it. You're going to need people to interact with it, that you're going to need IT security around it. You're going to need it to connect to other systems, et cetera. And no matter what any vendor tells you out there, there is almost no plugin that works immediately out of the box to integrate something into your environment or with another system. In fact, I would challenge anybody to tell me there's a plugin that works with your overall ecosystem. And even with the plugins that say this software will work with this software with a plugin, there's usually a lot of caveats, which are, yes, if the versions are this, yes, if you didn't make any changes to the underlying software, yes, if you didn't change any data structures, et cetera. So when I say only build if you have to, and you have to, so you got to choose what you want to build, really you need to choose where are you going to put your development resources and your build resources. What do you have your capability and capacity to do there? So it becomes a very, you're putting something into a non-simple machine a lot of times. So that's a consideration with build versus buy. Another kind of consideration here is a successful roadmap to implement something. And people tend to think, well, when I'm turning software on, I'm just turning software on. Well, no. If you do it well, and I'm going to back up here a second. So I think many people on this would also nod their heads if I said, how many times have you heard that we're going to put this software in and it's going to transform stuff, and then it really fell flat, didn't deliver the value? And it's unfortunately fairly common. And I would argue most of the time the reason that stuff falls flat is because you didn't do the work up front around this. So the business architecture to say, what are your objectives with this? What are the requirements? What do we need to change in workflows and rules and roles and how the system works? How do we do the analytics and reporting? I'm a huge fan of defining the MVP before the vendor lands on the ground, because if you buy something and you go to implement it, when the vendor lands, and this is not meant to be a knock on any vendors, they are going to want to get their software turned on in a way that they're familiar with as quickly as they can, because they start getting paid. That's the nature of the business, and that's also human nature to do that. So they're going to want to do that. If you want the product to get turned on the way that you want it to get turned on, you need to define what you need when it's turned on. So that's really important. And that's where people in the build world, you do this naturally. You have to do it, right? You may do it well, you may not do it not as well, but you have to do this. And where I think that people kind of miss sometimes is if they're in the buy world, they sometimes miss on doing this. They don't do it up front because they're like, well, we're going to buy the software. The vendor knows how to do it. They'll help us kind of figure this all out. I would argue that this is one of, if not the most important things that you can do. And you'll see from where I put my Harvey balls on how important it is or how much you need to do, the importance I put on this in both the build and the buy world. So, you get a few breaks when you're doing the buy because a vendor has a package of software. You can only do so much with requirements, only do so much with workflow and kind of analytics and those things. The technical architecture, this is where it diverges a bit more, because the buy has a more defined technical architecture. The build, you have to do it yourself. The place that I would suggest you need to pay a lot of attention is around the data architectures, no matter what. And then obviously the integrations are huge here. Systems architecture, complete divergence. But then again, you come back to, so there's technical architecture, technical kind of build pieces are different. But when you look at the implementation and you look at things like project management, change management, leadership, all of those things are equally important in a build and a buy. So there's not this. This is where some of that. When I say that it creates a false perception of the road ahead with the buy of a software is, yes, you can do it quick and maybe not as well if you don't do all this stuff. But if you want it really implemented well and done well, you're going to do these things, which are a lot of the build discipline as well. So those are some things to consider as you go through this your decisioning process. Okay, so you say, well, I'm going to buy, but you said buy, and then you're saying you still need to build. And I think I touched upon this a little bit, but you're inserting into the ecosystem. So you've got integrations, data migrations, movement and governance, infrastructure, network connectivity, authentication, Active Directory, and then everyone's favorite, IT security, which you've got to pay attention to. So this is why I say you still have to build. So you're going to be building no matter what. So choose what you're going to build. So these are the components within that. So then you say, okay, well, so Simon, if you say I got to do all this stuff anyway, why not just build? And here's where I think the conversation gets a little more tricky. And it's because if you choose to build, you are now a software development company, whether you like it or not, and you likely have only one customer. So what does that mean? That means you have an elevated level of internal capabilities needed and commitment. And I will stress this commitment significantly because I get to work with a lot of clients across a lot of different companies, and they have internal software a lot of times. And I talk to them about the commitment because they say, well, we're thinking about maybe going and replacing this with something off the shelf that we buy. And so I say, okay, that may be the right decision for you or may not be the right decision. Let's talk about what your commitment is if you keep building this software out, because you are now a software development company that has to continue to provide releases, additional functionality support for your own folks. You have to continue to maintain currency with versions of other software in both your internal ecosystem and the overall environment. So let's just say you have a piece of software that integrates with data coming from EMRs. You're going to be continually keeping up with all the updates on all the different formats, all the different data that's coming, additional things that folks want. So this ongoing maintenance is going to be significant for you if you're going to build. So that I'm being really clear. I'm not biasing either to build or buy. I'm saying these are the considerations to make the correct decision within your organization. So these are the things you have to know. So are we going to also maintain internal teams with those skill sets? And as we heard earlier, give them the opportunity to learn and develop and grow and be able to innovate and work with other systems. Are you willing to make that commitment to do this? Because if you're not willing to make that commitment, you're going to get a product that's going to get worse and worse and worse over time, that because you haven't committed to keeping it current and expanding the use cases for your users. So that's one of the reasons you might choose, all else being equal, to buy versus build. Now, if we go, so when should I build it all? I think there's some really compelling things here. And when I say only build if you have to, and you have to, this is where I say, and I have made the arguments to boards that I want to build something instead of buying something, is there's simply not a product in the marketplace that'll meet your needs. You may be operating in a niche industry that there's just nothing out there that you can either make fit or easily fit to what it is. So you're going to do something that you want to, you have to do something. You're forced into it. The second one is where I said I'm going to touch on intellectual property. People like to use the term intellectual property to mean a lot of things. And I'm talking about everybody across vendors, across organizations, love to say, well, we have IP. So you'll notice my underlined word here is defensible intellectual property. That's where I say is if this is defensible in the marketplace, then yes, we can have a conversation around intellectual property. But if you try to tell me that you have intellectual property in some generalizable workflow that 7 other people are doing, it's not defensible. It's not truly IP. But if you truly have defensible IP and you cannot abstract it by putting it into a smart service or by using it in a kind of a sidecar, technical sidecar for something, then yes, you're in a situation where you should build something because that's the way to protect it. And you can get into conversations around patent law and et cetera, and how that works or doesn't work in technology, but I'm going to leave it at that. Another great reason to build something is it will increase your enterprise value within your investment or business model. So if you are on a journey where you are funded from VC, you're moving to private equity or trying to go public, and this will increase your enterprise value to have something that you built versus something that you have bought, and it's real and your board agrees with you and your CFO agrees with you, then yes, this is another really compelling reason to go and build something versus buy something. Another one that we're running into, is vendor contractual terms in the space are unacceptable. I mean, there are vendors out there that have, positions in the marketplace, leading positions, stuff that feels monopolistic positions, and they have contractual terms that you just are unacceptable to you. They don't allow you to work with other vendors that too closely related to their space. The contract terms, whether they're financial or the length of term that you need, don't work for you. Their licensing model doesn't work for you. There's just going to be situations where you run into that the vendor terms are unacceptable to your organization to be able to sign. And that does happen sometimes. And in that case, then you're going to lean towards a build versus a buy. And then another one is you will offer this product to external customers. So if you're going to resell it and you will really do that, it's not a pie in the sky idea that 17 years and 2 days from now we might offer this in the marketplace. No, if you have a concrete roadmap idea that you're going to offer this product to external customers, then yes, that's another reason that I would say you should go and build it all. I have a note down here that says cost to implement and maintain is rarely cheaper to build. I've heard the argument that it's going to be cheaper to build this a lot of times. And that really, you need to work through what is the total cost of ownership in both of them, because frequently it's closer to even than people think. There are scenarios in which scale becomes important here, that you may be able to build something that for a large user base that you're going to use internally, and it's just an unacceptable contract price to buy it. There may be scenarios in which if you're small, it's just much easier to buy something than build something too. So really take a look at this, because there is not a one size fits all. It's cheaper to build something or it's cheaper to buy something. I think that was it. I hope I stayed on fairly good time, Victor, but certainly if folks have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Well, yeah. To be honest, I'm really amazed by the final note when you said that the cost of buying and maintaining a ready-made solution is quite often about the same with the building one and maintaining one. That's an eye opener. That's really a big insight, I guess, for most of the listeners as well, because in most cases, we consider building a solution that is customized, that is specified for our unique business processes, as something that is so cost-taking, so cost-blowing, I would say, that most prefer buying a solution, not considering the fact that strategically you will be paying so much money as well. And thank you so much. Aside of it, there's so much. Yeah.
Victor, I'll go back to when I said there's all of the work that you have to do to successfully implement a purchased solution. People typically don't count that as part of the costs. So like all that upfront work to implement something successfully, all the business architecture, all of those components, when you're starting to look at the cost considerations, and software is not cheap to license, software is not cheap to buy. It's always more expensive than you think it is. So it really is situation by situation, and there's no one size fits all answer there.
Totally agree. No silver bullets as usual, unfortunately, but still no silver bullets. Yeah. And we actually have questions for you already. Let me
Okay.
just open the chat section. Uh, can you share more examples of successful implementation of in-house solutions or all of off-the-shelf products in healthcare IT? And what were the critical success factors in each case?
So I think I'll start with the critical success factors, and I'll go kind of back to how it plays out in the build versus or built, purchased or built solutions. The critical success factors to me are, what are your objectives? So before you get to requirements, whatever else, what are your objectives? What are you seeking to accomplish? And how well can you articulate those objectively? So if somebody comes and says, I want to make this better, by how much, over what period of time, those types of things, right? So I think really understanding your objectives is going to help drive you down this road. If you don't have a really concise, clear understanding of your objectives, you aren't ready to start anything, would be my argument. I think that the next thing is jumping from there to understanding what impact is this going to have both within and around your business. So when I talked about what is it going to change, so we have our objectives. What do we need to change to get to those objectives? So if you just think you can put in a different piece of technology and it's going to change everything, you are going to be disappointed 9 times out of 10. Because if you don't change the roles, you don't change the workflows, you don't change how you do your data management, you don't change your analytics and reporting, you will almost certainly be disappointed. So I would suggest that that's another really key component. So your objectives, what do you need to change to get to those objectives before you have the technology, right? This is really kind of how do you put this all together? And then to me, the other thing is that idea of the minimum viable product. So what are you going to launch with? What do you really need to make this effective? And everything else can go in the backlog. It should be prioritized in a backlog. But what do you need to make it effective? And then once you have that set up, it's implementation discipline. So it's just a disciplined implementation. I mean, that's one of the things that working with you guys at Yalantis over the last 10 years that I've loved is because that like the structure, the implementation discipline that you bring to it is really a helpful lift. Now, whether you have if you have the skills internally, if you're going to rely upon a vendor, build versus buy, that implementation discipline is critical to keep yourself on track. So those would be the big things I would say. And I've been involved in implementing small apps for companies that have been very successful and made significant differences in performance. And those were things because we had a specific objective and we understood what we needed to change to get there. So we need to get this information in the hands of these people, for example. Massive difference just by having this, this real-time information made a really big difference. I've had systems that we've purchased off the shelf that we've implemented that have been pretty much bog standard off the shelf, and they met our objectives. They were able to meet our timelines. Their product off the shelf was a minimum viable product, and we managed the implementation well, and that was successful. And I've had ones that haven't gone like that, and it was because we didn't specify objectives or a minimum viable product or didn't manage it well. And we've all been there on those. So I think those would be my big takeaways.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These are really big ones. All right. We have another question. Thank you, Simon. What are the key challenges healthcare organizations face today in terms of any solution implementation? Which one's the most critical from your perspective? A tough one.
It's a it can I say everything is the answer? Um, you know,
I guess so.
here I'm going to say time, and I'll expand upon time a little bit. We are in healthcare in a fairly significant time of technical change right now. I've spent my entire career in healthcare over the last 30-ish years or so, I guess, and we we are in a time of probably more architectural and technology use change than I can recall. And what I mean by that is not just kind of, using EMRs and stuff like that, is actually I'm seeing healthcare catching up to some modern technology, modern architectural standards. And so there's a lot going on. And, the economy is not getting fantastically better to all of a sudden, have employers want to put more time aside for you to do new and change things. So this pressure of, on one hand, of this really significant technical change happening and huge capabilities opening up. I think we've heard about AI capabilities. Computing power is much more now. We've got data moving around a bit more from EMRs and things like that. So there's a lot more possibility sitting here. But then on the other side is this huge amount of pressure to just run your business and maintain profitability. So I'm going to say the biggest thing that I think we see now is availability of time for executives to focus on stuff, and frankly, from the top of the company all the way down through the line level.
Thank you so much. Wow. We have actually so many questions to answer, but unfortunately we're pressed for time. So I would like to thank you, Simon, for the presentation, for the Q&A session, and the insights you provided. I'm definitely sure that these are eye-openers. And I guess we will be forwarding some of the questions later on, so that
Okay,
people could catch up with their questions and answers. Thank you so much again for the
that'd be great.
presentation. It was really nice.
Thank
All
you.
right, but let's continue. Thank you so much. Let's proceed. Our next healthcare expert will guide you through the digital patient engagement models, reflect on where the healthcare industry is going in conditions of internet economy, deliver the key elements of a unified patient engagement platform, and even show how it works. Hi, Mark. The audience is all yours.
Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Mark Boudreau. I'm from Healthfully. I also have Josh Fuller, who's our Director of Client Services. He's going to join us and actually give you a demo of what unified digital patient engagement looks like and its role in digital healthcare transformation. So I'll just present a few slides on, what is unified digital patient engagement and what are some of the advantages and where we see the marketplace going. So when you look at patient engagement, this is the health system engaging patients. There's a couple of models out there. I mean, in years past, we used to have this, what we would call a digital facade, which was really just a website where patients would go to see the services they could get. But if they really wanted to engage in the services, it would be, a phone call that they would have to do, or it would be some terse, web form that they would need to fill out. Then there was this whole trend of digital front doors that, again, for the most part, were initiated through websites. And, all of a sudden, more services were exposed to the patient through those websites. But they, for the most part, they were different links to, different EMRs, whether it was the hospital EMR or whether it was the, ambulatory services EMR for primary care, et cetera, or it was a specialty service EMR for something like behavior health, for example. All these EMRs have their own portals and you'd have to access them through different links. and the user experience was different, and all of the patient data was stored in those links separately, and you couldn't see everything together. And then in terms of getting care, it was very limited. You could maybe schedule a visit, you could do med refills, but that was kind of the limit of digital delivery of care. And the model that we're seeing today is what we call unified patient consumer engagement, and it's like an all-in-one platform from the patient's perspective. So they have one way of getting access to care. They have one way of choosing all of the care that they need across disparate care settings. The look and feel of the solution is the same, no matter whether they're dealing with the hospital, primary care, or behavior health. They can see all of their data in one place, and they can actually participate in the delivery of care. So the digital tool there is about getting the complete job done that the patient is looking to get done. Like, the patient's not just looking to book a meeting, they're actually looking to receive and solve a particular problem. So that's where we see things today. Why now? Why is patient engagement such a big thing happening today? Well, first of all, healthcare tends to lag other businesses, other industries, and other businesses. You take a look at online retail, pretty far advanced, banking. These technologies have been well adapted by consumers a while ago, but it is inevitable that healthcare will exist within the internet economy, and COVID has helped act as a catalyst to accelerate that, but it is coming. There's also a continuous line of new forms of care, and when I say that, it's ongoing care outside of the hospital. So things like value-based care, RPM, hospital in the home, or social determinants of health management. These are all forms of ongoing care that require extensive patient engagement to be successful, right? This is not something that you could do from an efficiency perspective through the phone and constantly having the patient come in for an in-person visit. This is something that definitely needs an extensive solution. And then you have the rise of online health services only. These are services that don't have any bricks and mortar, that have managed to expand nationally really quick. And, the ones that come to mind are urgent care, virtual urgent care, for example. There's quite a few services that have popped up nationally. The other one since COVID that's really stuck and expanded is behavior health. Apparently both providers and patients don't want to go into an office for mental health consultation. So that experience is continuing. And for those organizations to deliver care completely online and be competitive, they really need an end-to-end solution that covers that total digital experience, and it needs to be a premium experience. And then you have new entrants that are really setting the bar in terms of digital expectations industry-wide. So some of you may have heard just recently that Amazon Prime just announced that Prime members for $9 a month can get access to Amazon's One Medical services, which are doctors available virtually and also in clinics, but you get unlimited access to virtual care for $9 a month. That has a big impact on the industry. And then there's other forward-thinking technology firms out there, like Teladoc's been in this space. 98.6 is another organization that's delivering care online. Anyways, these are having big, wide expectations in terms of what unified or all-in-one patient engagement is all about. And then you have, patient demand for more convenient experience like they receive in the retail space. You look at Amazon, you can order your product, pay for your product, get it delivered to your house all in one platform, right? And these forces are really having an impact on the technology industry today. So there's a industry-wide technology convergence happening, and it is a convergence towards this unified patient engagement concept. So if you look at all the different types of patient engagement technology, you have everything from patient CRM all the way down to, well-being reward solutions. And if you look at that today, you can see that some of the televideo vendors are expanding laterally and are getting into secure messaging, for example. And you have secure messaging organizations getting into patient registration. So the industry acknowledges the technology advantages, the cost advantages, and the convenience for patients of this, unified patient engagement, of having the complete end-to-end process solved in one solution. So there's this convergence towards that unified patient engagement platform. And that's not always easy because the architecture really needs to support that concept. And so some of these companies are going to have to, start from scratch from an architectural perspective to really fulfill a unified patient engagement platform. And from the organization or the health system perspective, there is definitely, a value side to this. Obviously there's cost reduction, revenue generation, improved clinical outcomes that come into play with better ongoing care management and digital engagement. But when you look at it from a broad strategic perspective, you could see that most health organizations are still in this far left corner here where they provide isolated functionality, right? They have multiple apps and multiple app owners within the organization. For example, they'll have a patient portal solution for their EMR for the hospital, a different patient portal solution for ambulatory care and behavior health and whatnot, right? The next step is what we're talking about today, which is that unified patient engagement, where you have one, solution for the complete end-to-end experience, from registration to care delivery. You have one app owner in the organization, and you have one digital patient experience. And if you can create that, then as a health organization, you have lots of options. One of them is to do a tried and true shared services operation where you say, okay, we're going to have one very efficient patient engagement platform that include care workers, the technology, and the new processes. And that shared service will service all of our primary care clinics, for example, in this health system. So I'll deliver, let's say, my RPM program through one shared service, and I'll offer it for all of my billing providers that are in the primary care clinics, for example. And you can see where you can get some huge savings and some real consistency of services and brand offering for the health system. And then of course you can move right up to the top right hand corner with profit centers. And a lot of the online service organizations that we see exist there, the patient engagement and ongoing care that they offer is all part of the profit center for them. And you can see where if you get really good at delivering shared services, then the shared services within your organization becomes a profit center, and you can start getting into things that generate revenue like RPM and whatnot, hospital in the home. And if you get really good at it, not only can you provide these services for your own health organization, but you can offer it to others. When we look at the architecture for unified patient engagement from a high level perspective, you can see the end-to-end nature of this. It includes everything from self-intake registration to scheduling and appointments to payments and different forms of communication, embedded in the solution, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. So you can have secure messaging, you can have, telehealth, you can have moderated communities. There's lots of forms of communicating and engaging the patient. And then, of course, you have, the patient has one unified patient record, right? It's all in one place. It's expanded to include patient-generated information, your RPM data, and all of the different patient portal information they may have collected. And then for health and wellness solutions, you provide the tool set to manage that ongoing engagement with the patient. So whether it's notes, prescribed orders, visit summaries, referrals, creating care plans, and coordinating community plans, it's all within that patient engagement solution. And, it's important to note here that, 80% of the patient engagement is happening with resources or clinicians that aren't physicians, right? So these are everyday care managers that are having the daily engagement with patients. So you want to make sure that they have a tool set that goes beyond what's provided in an EMR. And then, of course, you need to be able to manage the various services, whether it's chronic disease programs, various care coordination programs, concierge services, smart screens, all those tools that make up the workflow of the care that you're offering. Then, of course, the analytics and BI need to be behind that. And you need to be able to integrate, of course, with the EMR and the enterprise systems within the health solutions so that patient engagement is truly, transparent. And then in terms of the consumer channels you serve, you need to be where the customers are, right? And so generically available on the web, it should be branded so the customer knows who they're dealing with. You need, for more intense experiences and younger audiences, they're going to expect everything to be in the app store. So you need native apps that take full advantage of the devices. You need to have, kiosks for those that may not have access devices but want to access a device in a pharmacy, in a school, or at employers' locations. And then, providing medical grade devices to integrate with the platform to allow hospital in the home or RPM solutions. You need to provide the same channels for providers, and you need to be able to have third-party online services be able to connect into the system as well. So that in a nutshell is what unified patient engagement looks like, and that all-in-one solution that is all part of digital health transformation. And from there, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pass it to Josh so you can actually see what a unified patient experience looks like.
Succinctly, and we'll talk about the stuff that Mark referred to. So we provide a branded experience, which is something that everybody is looking for. They're looking for their brand across the enterprise to be unified and shown out to their consumers. So you see some of our sample brands here. And we typically see people using the native offering just because it provides the most seamless experience. In the application itself, you will find a truly unified platform. So you'll see these little tiles at the top. It gives the consumer the ability to control everybody that they care for. Instead of having to sign into the portal for your account, sign out, and sign into your daughter, for example, you get one unified platform to quickly toggle between the different people that you care for. And you'll see that throughout the demonstration. In the to-do section, this home screen is really all the transactions that might occur in an enterprise. So everything from you have an upcoming appointment, here's all your forms that need to be done from start to finish. And then once the visit happens, we're prompting you for a Google review or a satisfaction survey to see how the services were that were rendered. So asking patients to fill out clinical assessments, things with e-signatures, free text responses, numerical values, device data, whatever the source or the response that is needed, the platform will ingest and not only store that data, report out on it, but also trigger workflow. So send alerts to providers as something is out of range, send that data back to the source record so you don't have to have a piece of paper that you scan into the EMR. So really creating not only the cohesive experience for the patient, but also in the office so they don't have to sit there and do administrative work that we can automate through the integration and through the platform itself. We supplement all this with push text and email notifications. So meet the patient where they are. So you have a new form to complete. Let's send you a prompt through your preferred channel. You have an upcoming appointment. Let's prompt you to pay for your copay. Let's prompt you to complete all the forms you have to do. Let's prompt you to have a telehealth visit. So let's use proprietary software that looks like it's coming from the branded application, and let's have them have that digital experience within on their device from where they are instead of having to come into the office itself. So really providing that unified experience. And with this, with what we see in healthcare, like Mark said, stuff is coming from multiple different systems. So to the patient, we don't know if it's coming from Cerner, we don't know if it's coming from Epic, we don't know if it's coming from Athena, but that doesn't matter to us. We just want one place to do everything that we need. And same thing for scheduling. We want to provide the patient with a unified scheduling experience where when they get to where they want to go, it doesn't matter what system that this is going back into. So let's curate the service destination where the patient is making selections, prompting people, putting in information that we can then reach into the source system and say, okay, this person needs to be seen for a sick visit. Here's all the providers that are available for that, regardless of the system that they're working in. So again, you might have an outpatient EMR, you might have an inpatient one. We're going to allow the patient to schedule in both of those and use the platform's intelligence to know exactly what system that needs to go back into. So really handling those transactions from a seamless experience, and then transforming healthcare by the bottom bar, where we have the health board, which is our unified patient portal with a holistic health record on top of it. So connected device data plus all of the various clinical sources. So the consumer gets access not only to themselves, their loved ones, but all of the different sources instead of having to reference multiple systems to get a full picture of their health. So looking at my Apple Watch, for example, looking at connected blood pressure devices, trending that data over time, providing them with a very clean UI has been critical because patients from different technical acuities, we want to give them a seamless experience that they don't have to ask questions on how it works. So interfacing with the medical records, bringing in data and unifying it back to the consumer. So I want to see my medications. I want to see my lab and test results. I want to trend my results over a period of time. So let me see all of my hemoglobin and see that data on a easy to consume graph instead of having to pick one by one to see what all of my total values are. And all of that data, I won't go through all of these, but taking whatever source and data we need, whether it's discrete data all the way down to PDFs and documents, and providing that back to the consumer. So that lets them access their data, but if they need to ask questions, let's provide them with a unified messaging platform that lets them not only text with providers, but also make phone calls, also attach videos, to attach photos. So everything from asynchronous communication with the office staff and the provider, but also providing things such as wound care, calling a provider, having that run through the platform and turning that directly into a telehealth conference. So taking all the functionality people are accustomed to in the platform.
We're experiencing some technical difficulties, but the things that we've already seen are just amazing. Mark, would you be able to proceed with the closing notes on the presentation of Josh?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks. It's too bad, I guess we have multiple presentation devices here that the mic turned off, as you can. But anyways, thank you very much for joining us today. I think you get a sense of what, a unified patient engagement solution is all about and what the advantages of it. Obviously, if there's any more questions, feel free to, reach out to the folks here or myself at any time.
Yeah, we actually have a set of questions for you and for the presentation that you've provided. If you don't mind, I will just share those questions so that you could answer them.
Okay.
Just a moment. Wow, so many of them here. Just a moment. Yeah, let's start with the first one. Love the app Josh is demonstrating. Oh, it's probably during the demonstration. Is this solution custom built?
Yeah, it's we developed it since it's been 7 years now, so it's a very mature product, and it is deployed as a software as a service solution. So it's a typical SaaS solution. We do offer some customization. So if a client has a specific integration that we haven't already done, or that they want to add a specific capability, our company is able to have specific customizations by client. Our solution is architected to handle that. But yeah, it's built by us. It's finished, and it's in production with a number of clients.
That's great. Thank you so much. Another one for you. The demo was fantastic. That's something totally new here in Europe, but seems well suited for it. Is your operation currently limited to the US, or do you have plans to expand into other markets?
Yeah, we certainly have plans to expand in other markets. What defines, the solution is where the data is stored, right? And we have an advantage that we use AWS for actually hosting of our application on. So all of the underlying infrastructure is AWS. Right now, the solution is hosted in North America, in fact, on the east coast of the US. But the whole solution can be transported into other jurisdictions around the world. We would just have to create another AWS infrastructure for that region. So if we're going into Europe, we need another AWS install in Europe, and we just port the entire solution that we already have developed into that marketplace. So it's not a big deal. We have had interest from European players, and we continue to have those conversations, and we're getting closer and closer, and pretty soon that infrastructure will be established.
That's great. Thank you so much for the answer. I guess I have a question about the solutions that Josh was demonstrating. I mean, the demo of the products themselves. What integration protocols do these apps utilize?
Yeah, so we integrate mostly with electronic health records, or EMRs, and most EMRs will have a set of APIs as defined by the 21st Century Cures Act, the Portability Act. Patients should have the ability to bring their data to any application they choose. So we have developed integrations with a number of EMR vendors already using those capabilities. We also, as individuals, have been involved in creating various integration engines. So our solution has an integration engine, so we can handle Fire, HL7, and all of the other components. So it allows us to integrate with just about any health system out there.
That's amazing. And it's really agile and flexible at the same time, along with the scalability. That's great. Thank you. We have one more question here. Thank you for your presentation, Mark. Do you mean to say that being a more digitized healthcare business leads to better expansion opportunities?
Yeah, I think so. And this is just what we're seeing in the marketplace. So there are health services out there that have decided that they're only going to deliver their services virtually, that they're not going to have any bricks and mortar or physical buildings. And what we've seen is we've seen them have the ability to grow much faster than organizations that need to build a lot of infrastructure, or at least acquire a lot of infrastructure. So if you have a practice that likes, working from home and would like to expand nationally and leverage existing clinics that are already out there, then yeah, that's a recipe for growth. You see, what's happening with Amazon right now. It's just unbelievable how a technology company is getting into the healthcare business.
That's great. Thank you so much. We actually have a couple more questions, but I think that these are not the only ones we have to answer, but we're pressed for time, so we will be redirecting those questions later on. I just wanted to thank you so much, Mark and Josh, as well, for the presentation and the live demo of the product. I think we've come a great way from transforming our mindsets, from getting digitized and becoming digital businesses, digital healthcare businesses, to considering options of building or implementing ready-made solutions, and finally getting to a well-suited, agile, scalable, and really flexible solution that is covering multiple endpoints and multiple channels of patient healthcare, which is amazing. I love how it ended up, and it was really, really nice one. Thank you so much for this journey that you spent with us. And I want to thank not only you and Josh, but also all of the experts who engaged today in our live stream. Thank you for the great thoughts, the personal experience in digital transformation for healthcare companies. I'm confident that listeners picked up practical tips and can weave into business plans, sparking transformation for more efficiency, for more growth, and for more opportunities. And wow, this has been like really, really an amazing experience and a truly insightful live stream. I'm sure there are many more questions to cover. And if you feel like you would like to have more questions answered, do so. You can use our email address, which is hello@yalantis.com. We will be receiving those email questions and redirecting them to our experts. Also, you can reach out to us via LinkedIn and write a message specifically to Mark, to Simon, or to Edward, or feel free to reach out to our LinkedIn channel, which is Yalantis. Also, feel free to watch our YouTube channel, which is Yalantis. And if you have any more specific questions, requests, feel free to reach out to us. We will be happy to answer. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for the questions and involvement. Stay tuned for more Yalantis events in the healthcare and technology. And thank you so much for your attention today. Bye.